Now, in its 27th year, the survey has established itself as Northern Ireland's premier environmental benchmarking exercise, with 150 organisations participating in 2025. So how does the scores look this year? The average score in 2025 is 77%, an increase of 1% on 2024. The mining and quarrying sector performed the best overall, closely followed by education. Let's take a closer look at the trends and findings this year. Whether it's employees, customers, or suppliers, organisations are embedding sustainable thinking across the board. We found that nearly all organisations engage their employees on environmental issues, with only 3% that don't. 87% of organisations assign specific environmental responsibilities to employees and actively seek their input on environmental issues and initiatives. Most organisations are actively engaging their customers on environmental issues, with only 7% saying they don't. This reflects a clear commitment to driving change beyond their own operations and influencing wider behaviour. When it comes to engaging with suppliers, we ask participants if they have a procurement policy that includes environmental criteria aimed at reducing emissions from the supply chain, is approved by the board or senior management and reviewed at least annually. 79% said they do. We can see that organisations are making progress on emissions reporting. 74% of organisations report on at least one category of greenhouse gas emissions, or scope, and 45% include Scope 3 emissions, a 7% rise from last year. However, 26% still don't measure or report on any emissions. Digging deeper into Scope 3, we asked participants to tell us more about the source of their Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions. 68% of organisations collect Scope 3 data on business travel, 67% on waste, and 64% on fuel and energy related activities. We find that companies are far more likely to report upstream emissions from suppliers than downstream emissions from customer use, which are harder to quantify due to limited visibility into end-of-life data. More than half of respondents have set targets to reduce their Scope 3 emissions, a strong move towards comprehensive carbon management. With climate risk and challenges intensifying, we wanted to know if businesses are considering the risk that climate change poses to their organisation and operations. It's encouraging to see that organisations are taking proactive steps to prepare, with over half of organisations having quantified climate risks and implemented plans, but nearly a quarter haven't started. Circular economy practices are becoming the norm. Around half of companies are reporting on waste and water usage, showing a growing commitment to environmental transparency. When we look at waste specifically, most businesses, 95%, are taking practical steps to make reductions. Nearly 80% of businesses buy recycled material and have policies to cut waste. 73% reduce single-use packaging and 72% refurbish equipment instead of replacing it. Only 1% said they take no action, showing sustainability is now part of everyday decisions in NI. The Climate Action Pledge is a commitment by businesses to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 30% or 50% by 2030 and work towards reporting Scope 3 emissions. This year, we reached 118 signatory organisations, with 14 new signatories in 2025. The construction sector leads with 26 signatories, followed by general services and manufacturing. Most signatories, 57%, have set a 30% reduction target, 38% are aiming for 50%, and a few have committed to even more ambitious goals of up to 100%. Collectively, signatories are making strong progress. Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions have fallen by 20% since the baseline year, from 1.25 million tonnes to 992,000 tonnes of CO2e thanks to improved energy efficiency, cleaner energy and low carbon technologies. The analysis of the sectors show impressive results. Retail cut emissions by 57%, construction by 55% and waste environmental services by 40%. High emission sectors such as manufacturing and food and drink also recording substantial reductions. Taking a closer look at Scopes 1 and 2, Scope 1 emissions have fallen overall since the baseline year. However, reductions aren't happening in all areas. Industrial processes rose by 27%, and while 70% of organisations reduced Scope 1 emissions, this means that 30% saw increases, showing progress but also room for improvements. Scope 2 emissions have fallen by nearly 50% since the baseline year. Most sectors achieved reductions, led by construction, manufacturing and transportation logistics. However, engineering and retail recorded increases. Explore more insights, trends and findings from the Climate Action Pledge and Northern Ireland Environmental Benchmarking Survey reports. Access the full reports at www.bitcni.org.uk.